We're now going to make scones. I think they're essential and absolutely perfect for every afternoon tea.
I would be very disappointed if there wasn't scones. You can't have an afternoon tea without scones.
All your childhood memories.
But I've never made them, so I'm excited.
Fantastic. Well, it's thought that perhaps scones originated in Scone Palace in Scotland, where all of the Scottish kings were crowned. Or it might have come, the word might have come from the Gaelic word scone, which means a large mouthful. So sort of like a large or a few mouthfuls, perhaps.
I was going to say,
Okay.
if you can eat a scone in one mouthful, you are doing well.
Very well. Right, so shall we crack on? So first of all, what we're going to do is we've got flour. And we're going to sift that. We want nice and light and fluffy scones. We're going to sift that into our bowl.
We don't want rock cakes, do we?
No. Nowadays, scones are more traditionally associated with the West Country, so sort of traditional cream teas in Devon and Cornwall, where they're served with jam and clotted cream.
Yeah, see, I'm a traditionalist. I like mine with lots of butter and jam. I mean, clotted cream is great, and I will eat them with clotted cream, but if I had a preference, it would be for butter rather than cream. Probably better for the waistline as well.
Well, I'm rather partial to the clotted cream myself. And then we need to have our cream of tartar and bicarbonate of soda. This is going to make them lift up and make them really light and fluffy.
Right, so are we going 1.5?
So we're going to go for 1.5 teaspoons of bicarbonate of soda. And then 3 teaspoons of cream of tartar. This is going to make them extra light and fluffy. So just sift that in. Okay, now we've got our diced butter, so I'm using unsalted butter. We'll add salt to season it, but I think it's easier to start like that. And this is cold butter straight from the fridge, and we've diced it up into small pieces. We're now going to rub that in. So if we just tip that in. Now, when you're rubbing it in, you want to just use your fingertips. It's great if you've got coolish hands. So if they are very hot, it's often worth running them under cold water. And then you're very lightly, not going to press really hard, just really lightly sort of like rub it through your fingers and let it drop back down. Bring it up like this.
So we want breadcrummies.
Absolutely.
Breadcrumb-like consistency.
Now, as we're using unsalted butter, we might want to just add a pinch of salt. Super.
So do you always use sultanas, or do you sometimes prefer them plain?
I always love sultanas in mine. What about you?
I'm a sultana girl. Any excuse for a bit of sugar.
Well, maybe I'll make mine plain and you put sultanas
Okay.
in yours, and then we've got a mixture if everyone fancies something a bit different. And try and lift your hands up a little bit higher like this and just let it sort of almost rub and drop through your fingertips. How's it looking? So really gentle. That's it. Almost like fine breadcrumbs. Just make sure you've got rid of all those bigger bits of butter.
Yeah,
just
still
squash
got
those.
some
The other
pretty big
thing you
lumps.
can do if you don't want to dice it, it's a quick way to do it is to, when the butter's really hard from the fridge, just put it through a coarse grater. So literally just coarsely grate it
Grating
through.
butter.
Yeah, that's quite a good thing to do.
That's genius.
It really does make a difference there if your butter's nice and cold straight from the fridge. Make sure you've got all the bits up from under the bottom so everything's mixed in, because you don't want the flour only mixed into some of the butter.
Yeah, it's good you said that because I had a large deposit of flour at the bottom.
And it's supposed to be that as you're lifting it up like this, you're adding air in, so you're making them extra light. We need to be careful later on when we're pressing them out that we don't squash all that air that we've taken the care to put in.
You better remind me because I'm always squashing them down.
Yeah.
Could you add blueberries to scones?
Yeah, blueberries are delicious. I tend to add dried blueberries.
Right.
They're really good. And people add lots of different things. You can be quite inventive. You could add like little chunks of white chocolate or put dark chocolate and cranberries in, sort of Christmassy ones, and a little bit of spice. They're really versatile. And then of course you could do savoury ones. So you could put in some cheese, grated cheese. There we go, I'm done. Yours looks lovely.
I'm quite proud of mine.
It looks fantastic.
Excellent. Right, what's next?
Okay, so now we're going to, because we're making sweet scones,
Yeah.
we're going to add the sugar. There's yours. And we'll just stir that through, just so it mixes in and incorporates. Now you're going to make sultana ones, so you want to add those now as well.
And you still add the same amount of sugar even if you're adding sultanas?
Well, I do, just because this is the standard recipe that
Right.
I always use. If you wanted to take a little bit out, you could. Or you could not add the sugar at all if you don't want to. I just think it's rather nice to have that sweetness. Lovely. That's super. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use 3 eggs. I'm just going to move this a little bit out of the way. 3 eggs, and we're going to break this into our jug, and then we're going to mix them up to the right amount of liquid with some milk. And this is another thing to make them lift. We don't want flat scones.
No. So I now just mix this up a bit?
Yes, mix it up with your fork. And now we're going to add some milk to make it up to 425 millilitres of liquid.
Right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Now just mix that in a little bit just to check it's all combined. The important thing is at this point, you now want to use a knife. You don't want to put your hands back into the mixture. So we're going to add the liquid, but we're just going to add it a little bit at a time with our palette knife.
And sort of cut like that?
Yes, cut into it.
And the reason you don't use your hands is it becomes a big mess?
Yes,
or?
it just yes, but also because it becomes very heavy. So what we're going to do is use the knife. So we're adding it quite gently and keeping all of the raising agents and all of the lightness in our mixture. Something very homely about making scones, don't you think?
Yes, it's definitely something that I don't think of doing much at home. You know, I can imagine I bake cakes occasionally for special occasions, but scones, I think so many people just go out and buy a scone. But as you said, it's really nice to make them yourself.
Actually, they're really quick and easy. They're great to do if you've got friends who've come round and you just want to do a very quick something at tea time.
I think if my friends came around and I told them I'd just baked scones, they'd probably fall off their chair.
You're going to have to surprise them next time they come.
Okay.
They do want to be quite sticky.
Right.
Sometimes people get nervous and want to add more flour, but actually you do want to have them quite sticky. It stops them from being too dry when they're cooked.
Because that's the thing, sometimes you get that, so you know what I mean by claggy?
Yes.
Dry, so like
Very heavy.
heavy. Perfect. Right.
Fantastic. So we now need to roll them out and cut them out into scone shapes.
I'm not supposed to press down too hard, am I?
No, don't knock out all that precious air we put in. So here's a baking tray, so you're ready to pop all your cut out scones onto them. So we're going to need a bit of space as well. Now again, as I said before, we don't want to add too much flour, but you will need a little bit on the worktop just so that it doesn't stick. So if you just want to put a dusting on. I don't tend to use a rolling pin. I think that you knock far too much of the lovely lift you've put into your scones out if you use a rolling pin. So I just gently press it down with my fingers.
It's going to be much more authentic that way anyway.
Well, I think so.
Sure, they didn't use rolling pins in Scone Palace.
So let's just do half of it at once.
What, half of the...
Half of the mixture, otherwise you're going to have a huge amount of sort of quite sticky dough. Feels lovely. Oh, there we go. And just literally just take the stickiness off it like that. Okay, and then we're just going to press it down gently with our fingertips, but not too much. You want to leave them quite high. I think scones are quite nice, quite tall.
Because you split them in half anyway, usually, so...
Exactly, but it's nice to have them not really thin, each part. Then I've got a bowl of flour here. We're just going to use that to dip our cutter into so it doesn't stick. And when you put your cutter in, it's really important to go straight in and straight out. You don't want to twist it because that pulls the dough and then they don't rise in a straight line. Okay.
Okay, in and out.
So straight down. Can you see all that air that puffs? You can feel it puff out and straight out. And then we're going to put them straight on.
Oops, mine's been left behind.
To our baking tray. Fantastic. And you want to try and get as many as possible out of this first batch because they're always the best and the lightest ones. You can tell whether it's a good scone, whether it feels all light and fluffy and airy.
I have to say, I'm feeling oddly positive about my scones. But then they do say pride comes before a fall, so...
They look fantastic.
So when I get the sort of endy bits like that, can I roll them up again?
Absolutely, you can roll them up, but just try to handle them as little as possible because the more that you're handling it, the more you're knocking the air out. The other thing that sometimes people do traditionally is they make a big round of scone and then cut it into quarters. That was one of the sort of more traditional ways to make scones.
Right. I've got one little runty one at the end.
Oh, that's a little taster one perhaps.
And now do I use the rest of this? No.
Well, I think let's pop these ones in the oven first, shall we? But before we pop them in the oven, we just want to brush the tops of them with a bit of the egg mixture that we've got left over. So,
And does that make them shiny with a nice golden
lovely
top?
golden glaze on top.
Excellent. So how long do we put these in the oven for?
Well, they go into a really hot oven, about 220 degrees for the first 5 minutes, and then you need to turn the oven down to about 180 degrees Celsius for the remaining 15 minutes. They're slightly smaller, you want to reduce the cooking time.
There we go.
Lovely.
So you'll be going clotted cream.
Absolutely, definitely. Jam first.
Jam first.
Yeah.
Someone told me there's a difference. Like in Cornwall they do jam first, and then in Devon they do...
I think that's right. I think most of my childhood holidays were in Cornwall and we had jam first, then clotted cream.
But in Devon they go crazy in the aisles and they put cream, then jam.
Absolutely. Perfect.
Okie dokie.
Let's put these straight in the oven. These look heavenly. Yours look gorgeous.
They are my first ever scones. I'm not sure that I get top marks because they're definitely a little on the wobbly side. They don't have a straight edge, but hey ho.
They've risen beautifully though.
They
Look at
have.
This one.
Do you think I can eat one?
Yes, I'm just going to choose. We're going to break them. Here you go. I think we should definitely try them before
Okay, yeah, no.
we put them out for everyone. It's splitting beautifully.
Almost.
Okay, well I'm afraid I'm going Cornish. I'm going to go jam, then cream.
So you're going to go jam then cream. Well, I think I'm going to have to go cream then jam. That's really good.
Nice and light, fluffy.
Really fluffy. I mean, I'm amazed actually. Quite proud of myself.
We're now all going to make some jam tarts, aren't we? So, these would be perfect for our tea party. There's some dough for you. I think it's fantastic to get children involved in baking.
Shaky, shaky, shake.
Shake it out. And they can always do so much more than we give them credit for. They're always really good. They're very competent at rolling out and doing things. And it's lovely for them to understand how we make our food and how we can put just a few simple ingredients together and make something absolutely delicious.
What are you going to put in your jam tarts? Are you going to put in marmalade, or strawberry jam, or lemon curd, or blueberry jam?
There you go.
Strawberry.
Look
A
at all this.
traditionalist.
Look at all this good rolling. Should we lift it up? Are you lifting it? Oh, you know how to do this, don't you? And I think for them it's great for their confidence. They feel really proud about it and then they can share it with other people. So I think it's great to get children baking.
Is this the leftover pastry that we had from our
from
bakewell tart?
Bakewell tart and the crab tarts. It's just such fun making jam tarts with children and they always seem to eat lots of them. Look at you, are you ready to do some cutting?
There you go, so
Not
push
quite.
it down
There's the cutter
firmly.
If you want to, you know how to push it down.
Look at that. Whoop whoop.
Oh, well
Oh
done.
no, you need to do it a bit firmer. There you go, really go.
There you go. You are so good at this. Put it in one of those. Well
done.
And the great thing about jam tarts is that you don't need to blind bake them first. So we can just put them into the trays like this and then spoon in the jam and bake them in the preheated oven.
Bob's your uncle. A jam tart.
It's rather pretty to do them with lots of different types of jam. It looks so lovely on the table.
Look like jewels.
Should we get one more out of there? You want to cut another one? Can you cut one more like that? Oh, well done. Oh, good. You've done it. That is brilliant. Can I put it in? Wow, look at you two.
Yeah,
Should we
professional.
put some more in? Let me do some more. And then we can put our jam in, can't we?
So you're going to spoon some jam in? So how much jam do you think? A nice generous dollop?
Yes, a teaspoonful. We don't want to overfill them, otherwise it'll all bubble out. Do you want some more?
That is perfect.
Do you want to do one more?
Wow, look at that.
Oh, well
I'll try
done.
the apricot then. We've done all of the jam.
You are so good.
Miranda, pretty professional looking
Star
tray.
bakers.
Well
Look
done,
at
Ruby.
you two. Well done. Do you want to put some more jam in?
So how long would I put these in the oven for, Miranda?
Probably only about 5 or 10 minutes if they're very small and quite thin with the pastry. The other thing you can do is if the children have been handling the dough a lot and it gets really warm, just pop them back into the fridge just for 5 minutes before you put them into the oven. Well done. Fantastic. Haven't we done well?
We have.
You are superstar bakers, all of you.
Tea is fantastic. It's a very exciting thing because there's a huge variety of flavours. It's apart from anything else here in Britain, it's such a big part of our culture. It's not only a comforting thing that one turns to in a time of difficulty, perhaps. It's also something that you share. So there's a real sense of kind of within the home. You sit around a cup of tea and you share a cup of tea. Someone comes over for a cup of tea. Families get together for afternoon tea. It's a very sociable thing. It's a very sort of happy thing. It's a kind of good, clean fun somehow, and it's a lovely thing because I think it's universal. You know, most people like tea in whatever form. In Britain, so it's something we can all share and all understand.
Sophie, this is Emily. She knows everything there is to know about tea, so hopefully is going to be able to tell us how to make the perfect cup of tea for our tea party.
I know there's a lot of technique to making a cup of tea. It's not just
There is
simple
indeed.
pouring. So you're going to show us how to do it?
I am. So to start with, the tea I've chosen for today is a Darjeeling Second Flush, which is a really nice black tea. It's got a really lovely kind of aromatic character to it. Yeah, absolutely, have a smell. So it's loose leaf, of course, which is very important for an afternoon tea to do it the traditional way. No tea bags here.
Why is that? Because is it just that tea bags are convenient and that's why people use them? I mean, what's the difference between loose leaf and tea bags?
Tea bags, you know, when they first came about, were a fantastic solution to brewing tea in a more convenient way. And in a way, you know, they could be better, and they get probably a very bad reputation, mainly because most of the supermarket tea bags have what's known as CTC tea inside. So the really small sort of cut tear curl, it's called, and the tea is sort of macerated to give you strength and colour and then third flavour. And what the loose tea and the sort of orthodox produced tea, which this is that it's whole leaf, so you get a really lovely full flavour. So you're getting, you know, the real focus is on the flavour and the quality of the tea, rather than the convenience. And in this occasion, obviously, we want it to taste as good as it can, so it seems appropriate. In terms of the loose versus bagged, the key is obviously giving the leaves room to unfurl. So the more they can dance around, and obviously you'll see them later dancing around in the pot a bit, the more flavour you'll extract. So the more room they have to move, the better.
I love the idea of dancing tea leaves.
Fantastic.
I know, they really do.
romantic.
Well, with the Chinese kind of greens and oolongs and things, you get really huge leaves that kind of, you know, really do unfurl, and you'll see them, they sort of take up a lot more room in the end. So if you've got them squashed into a little tea bag, you're sort of restricting them a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to brew us some tea in this lovely glass pot, because then you can see that dancing of the leaves, and you can see the kind of colour changing. Obviously we've got these other lovely pots here which are great too. You know, you could brew it in anything. Glass and china are both great for brewing tea.
Does it make any difference to the taste?
I mean, very subtle differences, yeah. And you know, it's again, it's a bit of a cultural thing where the Chinese sometimes use sort of terracotta pots and ceramics and things, which some believe to kind of hold the flavour, and you never wash them, so they kind of keep that really earthy, lovely flavour for a really rich oolong or something. But certainly in the traditional British way, we like our china.
Can I just ask, do I need to warm the pot first?
It's a very good thing. It will just keep the tea hotter for longer, because the cold, particularly china, gets very, very cold, and glass in fact. So the more you can warm the cups and the pots, the better. So yes. The key to making a really good cup of tea is, firstly, very good tea. So we've got a really lovely Darjeeling second flush. It's loose, it's orthodox produced. You've got some really lovely big leaves in there, nice chunky silver tips, which is a good sign that it's a really good Darjeeling. You then need to have lovely filtered water and freshly drawn, so don't keep reboiling your kettle, and then getting the ratio of the tea to water right.
I'm very interested to see this.
I'm estimating that this pot probably will do about 6 cups. They're quite small teacups as well, and I'm going to do a teaspoon per head. So spoon that into the infuser.
And is this your perfect teaspoon measure?
It is. So this, I'm slightly spoilt here. I've got a lovely perfect cup of teaspoon, but just a heaped normal teaspoon will do the job. And obviously you can play around with your own taste. It's very personal. I always encourage people to play around to their own specifications. Exactly. So then we're going to add our freshly boiled water.
Anticipating
That
that's going to
lovely-
taste wonderful already.
That lovely sound of the water going into the tea. And again, another important thing to bear in mind is the temperature of the water. For this lovely black tea, and for all black teas, off the boil is perfect. But if you were doing a green tea or a white tea even, they're a lot more delicate because of the way they're processed. So you need to actually have a much lower temperature. So you don't, I mean, if you're at home, you don't need to necessarily bring, temperature gauges out and anything like that, but you just need to bear in mind that boiling water on a green tea, for example, will burn it, and that's what gives you that sort of bitter flavour that people associate with green tea.
It's so funny because I find the green tea really, really bitter, and I just assumed it was just green tea.
Yeah.
No, it's green. I mean, a lovely green tea should be really lovely and sweet and refreshing.
So how long would I wait after the kettle had boiled?
If you just flip up the top of your kettle, that will obviously let it all steam out, and give it, leave it 5 minutes. That will probably bring it down. The other thing you can do, which is a bit fiddly, and obviously take care when doing it with boiling water, is if you pour it into a mug and then sort of out again and back, that will drop it about 10 degrees. So not to do with children around.
That amber colour is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, so it's a really lovely, lovely colour. Yeah, they were. Well, they were dancing around when the water comes in, so they'll continue to.
Well, they do look like they're filling up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Emily, you need to help us with the dilemma, the oldest dilemma. Do you put milk then tea, or tea then milk?
So it's, as you say, a hotly debated topic, and I'm sure there are keen supporters of both sides. So dare I say which one I support? So certainly traditionally, the tea has historically always been. The correct way, let's say, has been considered to be putting the milk in afterwards. But I have to say, from a taste perspective and from a tea perspective, if the tea's too hot, it can burn the fats in the milk, which then gives you a sort of slightly, not quite the best cup of tea you've had.
So is that way?
Slimy.
And you get that little bit of oil on the top.
Yeah, it just won't bind
I've
quite as
always
well.
wondered how that happened.
Whereas obviously, if you're putting the milk in first, then the ratio of the hot liquid to the milk is, when it first hits the milk, is a lot less, which means that it kind of binds a little bit better.
How interesting.
Yeah, there was also a historical reason for putting the milk in first, which was that they believed that because the china wasn't necessarily always really good china, or it was so fine, that actually putting the milk in first meant that the sort of china was protected, if you like, from the hot liquid going in and cracking it.
So they didn't ruin their beautiful cups.
They didn't ruin their beautiful cups.
Mistaken.
But no, it continues to be hotly debated, so...
Well, it doesn't matter for this one because it's Darjeeling, so I'm going to have it without milk anyway.
Absolutely. So this I really do recommend without. It's got a really lovely, very unique muscatel flavour, which is a sort of grape word to describe that sort of really lovely aromatic characteristics. The next thing to think about is the brewing time. So making sure that the contact between the leaves and the water is not too long.
So you actually take the tea leaves out?
Actually take the tea leaves out. So the key is to just making sure that they're not in contact for too long.
Should I take that?
Yeah.
Lid back on?
Lid back on. So now what you've got in here is just the lovely, perfectly brewed tea. So you don't need to worry about it going over stewing. Putting the leaves directly in there obviously is fantastic if you've got exactly the right amount of tea for everyone.
Oh.
But what it means if the leaves are still in there is that the next round will be, when you sometimes do it, your granny used to make it with the least leaves in the pot.
And then
And that's
more.
great. And then you can obviously take one of these strainers and strain the leaves out over the cup, which is lovely. But as I said, you just need to get the perfect amount, because if you leave any water in there with all the leaves, it will continue brewing and you'll get something a little bit bitter.
Yes.
Exactly. So let's have some Darjeeling.
And Darjeeling is in northern India.
It is. It's in the Himalayas. It's very high altitude, which is partly what contributes to its flavour. Tea is just like wine in the sense that you get a really all the characteristics of the flavour come from the terroir, so they come from exactly how high they're grown, the soil and the climate are all the things that contribute to the different characteristics of different teas. So obviously you get teas from all around the world. Already they're quite different because of the areas they're grown in. But even within India, you've got Assam, which is nestled in the northeast, and you've got very flat tea estates and very humid conditions. And that Assam is sort of really strong and malty and punchy, whereas in Darjeeling, very high elevations, very steep gardens, you've got a very different flavour, which is unique to Darjeeling.
It is delicious.
Well, thank you, Emily. We have learnt a huge amount.
And we've had a fantastic cup of tea.
Good, I'm glad.